This is Gray.
This is Mel.
This is Liz.
And welcome to Chuck versus the Podcast!
Episode 103 for Monday, January 30th, 2012. That was, of course, my Toronto Chuck viewing party. I want to thank everybody who came to that party, and I'm sure we all had lots of fun and lots of tears. In the Chuck season series finale. Oh my goodness, 2-part episode. We will discuss it at length as well as a number of things that are on your brains. Of course, talking about the Chuck movie, etc. We'll get to it. Mel.
Well, yes, the show has ended, and well, even before it ended, people were calling for a movie. When are we going to get a movie? We need a movie. And of course, with that ending, that just left things wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, the cries for a movie are going up all over. I've seen petitions, letter writing campaigns, etc. mentioned. And here's the thing. It's going to be at least 2 years before Fedek and Schwartz are ready to consider a movie. They've said so several times in a lot of different interviews. So I feel like any campaigns now are really just too early. We kind of need to let the dust settle, let them have a little more time to, they need to process too. This has been a big part of their lives.
Yeah.
And, kind of let it settle. But, if you want to do something, if you feel like you need to do something to help support the possibility of a Chuck movie, the best thing you can do is buy the DVDs.
Yeah.
NBC has nothing to do with the possibility of a movie. They only have the TV broadcast rights. Warner Brothers produced the show, sold it to NBC in the U.S. to air, and, other networks outside the U.S. But they are the ones that they have the rights to any movie possibilities at this point. So they're the ones that if you need to do something, you want to target them. And the best thing to do, as always, as Chuck fans know, is target the bottom line. And that means buy the DVDs.
Yeah, and there's huge things at stake here. Because the thing is, with Warner Brothers, they've got the purse strings, and they're the be-all and end-all. They have the rights, and they can say no. Like Veronica Mars, Alex at TV Watch pointed that out on Twitter, that Veronica Mars had a rabid fan base. There was definitely traction. Rob Thomas, the creator of the show, he had an idea in mind of what he wanted to do for a movie, and he wanted to do it. It still hasn't happened. It may happen yet, but Warner Brothers has said no. And so what are the things that could potentially make this happen is, and I think we can say this, it's been publicly posted on the internet, but the first round of syndication did not include Chuck. And so that is not necessarily horrible news. It's not great news. But what it means is that there hasn't been enough traction yet to even get Chuck into syndication. And so that's what in the industry is called the mother lode. Where Warner Brothers can get a pile of new money back into this property. And so what is going to give traction for possible syndication is lots of interest in the DVDs. So if Warner Brothers sells a pile of DVDs, they can go to the advertisers and tell the advertisers, look, everybody's still pouring money into this property. There's a lot of interest. And so that could help them get syndication. Once they have syndication, they have a lot more money coming in. Money plus Chuck equals is something in their brains, and that's when they might be willing to either produce the movie themselves or possibly sell the rights to Josh and Chris. I would say, and there's been some ideas presented, like, say, for instance, could we do a Kickstarter campaign? Okay, let's just entertain that idea for a second. Kickstarter campaign. Let's just say, and I think this is pretty optimistic, 100,000 people give $10 each, and we have $1 million. And I'm picturing Austin Powers, $1 million. It sounds like a lot of money, but it's actually not a lot of money. $1 million doesn't pay for one act of a TV show. A single hour of television costs like $3 or $4 million to buy, let alone a feature film. And if it was a feature film, even just straight to DVD, $1 million is not going to make it happen. But let's just say we could buy the rights for $1 million and hand them over to Chris Fedak. First of all, it's not going to happen right now. It's not going to happen before the season 5 DVDs are released. It's not going to happen before Warner Brothers gets syndication rolling. The other thing, too, is when syndication is rolling, that's when there's going to be a lot of brand new eyes on Chuck. It's going to be playing at different time slots. People are going to pop on the TV and say, oh, what's this cool show? And so you're going to get a lot more interest in a movie at that point. So absolutely. We all love the idea of a Chuck movie, but there's a process that it's going to take, or process, I guess you could say in the States. It doesn't happen just right the day after the series finale airs.
Right. And again, to underscore that, we want to target the bottom line and the bottom line of Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
That's the main point that we have. And I know we also have a lot of questions coming in about when the season 5 DVDs will be available and whether or not there will be a complete series box set. I assume the answer to the second question is yes, because studios love box sets.
Mm-hmm.
They can, even if you've already bought seasons 1 through 4 separately, they know that you'll buy you'll buy a complete series box set too.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's probably a given. We don't have the release date for season 5 on DVD yet, but expect to hear that pretty soon. It should be, my guess is going to be that it will be out in March or April.
Yeah.
Is what it's looking like. They've already produced several of the extras for the set, and they just have a few more things to do. So
yeah, and if you're planning on pre-ordering Chuck season 5 on DVD or Blu-ray, or actually any of the other Chuck DVDs or Blu-rays, what better place to do it than at the podcast site? Just go to chuckpodcast.com, and right at the very top of the site, you see the little pictures of the Chuck DVDs. Click there and it takes you to Chuckazon, a place where you can get all things Chuck, and the purchases are exactly identical to as if you had purchased them from Amazon.com. So as soon as Chuck is released, you will get your season 5 shipped to you, and a tiny bit of that purchase will go to help support the podcast, which will help us keep bringing these episodes to you. While you're there, take a look around. There's also DVDs from the cast and crew and other projects that they've been in. There's books that might be of interest to you, like the Chuck comic book. And if you click on the Amazon.com link at the top left of Chuckazon, you can browse Amazon.com's entire site, and everything that you purchase in that same session will actually go to support the podcast. So please think of this. It would help us a lot. Thanks.
And correct me if I'm wrong, there was an implication made that once the series finale had aired, that it was going to be made available online.
That is the impression that I was given. I haven't, as of right this second, I haven't seen that happen yet. But that was the impression I was given, is that once the series finale aired on NBC, all the rights revert back to Warner Brothers, and then they would put it out on, iTunes, Amazon, etc. And so the rights revert back to them. I think that was the issue. It was just, it's always about money.
Yeah,
and NBC didn't want to pay for the streaming rights during the season, which meant that Warner Brothers couldn't release it either. So that's how those agreements work. So they, I expect to see, if not actually see the episodes online in the next week or two, then just see an announcement of when they're going to be available.
Yep. And watch Chuck TV, watch our Twitter feeds. You will know really quickly.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
That's another thing. We'll deal with that, at the end of the podcast too. But ChuckTV.net is not going anywhere. Mel, Liz, and Gray, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah. My trip to Mars, finally I can take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to the wilds of Africa. No.
Yeah.
We're here.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Warner Brothers and releasing, we're participating in a campaign now to ask Warner Brothers to release Tim Jones' beautiful Chuck score on CD. And didn't you just love that score in the episodes?
Oh, yeah.
It was so beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
So beautiful. Gorgeous. I, for one, would love to have this CD. So, it's a letter writing campaign and shouldn't take more than 5 minutes of your time. So visit chucktv.net, /Tim Jones CD. Sorry. for all the details and questions. If you have any, of course, you know where to go for those.
Yeah. And speaking about Chuck composer Tim Jones and his awesome soundtracks, I'm so excited to announce a couple of things. One is that for the rest of this podcast, we're actually going to be able to have Chuck soundtrack music underneath our discussion, thanks to Tim Jones. And also, we have decided to add another podcast to our release schedule because Tim Jones will be coming on to talk about scoring the finale. So there will be a special interview with Chuck composer Tim Jones out in the next week or so talking about scoring the finale, and then we'll continue with the podcasts that we had planned. Yeah, and speaking about the future, and no, I'm not going to go to Mars. Future podcast schedule, we are going to have some. First of all, really, really, really exciting. And I know there's been a lot of kind of interviews with Josh Schwartz and Chris Fedak. I didn't watch any of them before the finale because I didn't want to spoil anything. Now that the finale's done, I'm going to spend the next week going online and finding every single thing about the finale and all of these cool interviews. And they did literally hours of interviews with Google. Google had a whole hour-long one and a bunch of stuff like that. So I would urge you do that. I mean, this is definitely cathartic to do. And we want to let everything settle. And so within about 3 weeks, I think that'll have happened. Everybody will have had to breathe, and we'll have talked the finale to death, and all the people inside the show will have had some time to rest. And then the week of February 20th, we're going to have an extended interview with Chuck co-creator Chris Fedak. That is awesome. And that will be where we will entertain, of course, discussion about a retrospective look at the series. So make sure to get your questions in terms of everything from that retrospective look. But then also that will be when we're going to be able to talk about things like the Chuck movie. Then towards the end of March, and I think this is awesome, we're going to have an interview with Mo Ryan from AOL TV. And of course, she's been on the podcast a couple of times now. She's a huge supporter of Chuck, and we always appreciate her insights into the character. And I know that she just loved season 5. So that is going to actually be, for now, our concluding podcast. We have no plans for releasing any podcasts after that. Of course, we will be back if there's anything significant that happens, like, say, for instance, a massive explosion at Comic-Con for Chuck, or maybe even when it goes into syndication, or if there's a Chuck movie happening, we will be there. The podcast site will be up for at least 3 years, and I can keep it up indefinitely if there's interest, so don't worry about that.
Yeah, that last podcast will be our love letter to you.
Yeah, with lots of tears, I'm sure. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, they're going to be happening today. Just warning you guys. It's not pretty. I'm not a pretty crier.
Chuck versus the podcast versus the Kleenex. Yeah. Cool. Well, the elephant in the room is our 2-part series finale, and we're going to talk about that in a second after a quick word from our sponsors.
This week's featured sponsors have products that help your computer. Don't have enough PCI slots in your computer? Magma.com can add more, even high-end graphics or storage cards, starting at $829. Or take a look at NetStore with PCI expansion enclosures starting at $499. FX Factory by Noise Industries powers hundreds of visual effects for Final Cut Pro, Motion, Final Cut Express, and Adobe After Effects. Part 2 of our sponsor messages will be after the episode discussion.
And we're back. First, I think we should probably talk about both episodes kind of together-ish, but let's start with Chuck versus Sarah, and if we naturally roll into Chuck versus Goodbye, that can of course happen. Chuck versus Sarah, oh my goodness, how hard to watch.
It was intense. It was really intense. I don't know that it wasn't really hard for me to watch, but it was, there was a lot happening. It was very emotional, very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I found it intense and and hard to watch. I nail biter for sure. I've lost 3 nails in the last week.
Yeah.
And cried a lot. I started crying during Chuck versus Sarah, and then off and on through the rest of it. So it was hard. It was hard to see Sarah looking at Chuck the way she was, that cold, heartless look on her face when she was, pretending, that she was still the old Sarah, Mrs. Bartowski. I don't know. That was really hard for me to see.
Yeah, and boy, it's interesting. Actually, to me, it was a really interesting window into what Sarah was really like in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because
it was pre Burbank Sarah. That was Graham's enforcer that they mentioned way back in season 1.
Yeah.
That was her before she met Chuck. And I think it just really underlined, thank God she met Chuck.
Absolutely.
Look who she could have been for the rest of her life if she hadn't met Chuck.
Yeah. And there was some questions raised about the fact that everybody knew that she could lose her memories with the intersect. And so when she came in, some people thought, well, wouldn't they have known right away? Wouldn't they have been asking her questions, etc.? I think everybody knew that she could lose memories like Morgan did, but nobody knew that Quinn would have those cards to completely erase things.
Exactly. They thought they still had time because she had just lost a couple of things.
Yeah. And
then she was back a day later. I mean, all they had was Morgan to go on, and it didn't happen that quickly for him. Especially to that degree. He lost parts of, I think what we saw was he lost a weekend. That was like the largest chunk of time.
Yeah.
The largest memory that he lost. And it was, I guess maybe back in, the whole bullying thing in junior high. But it wasn't so drastic. It wasn't 5 whole years of his life gone. And in one day. It was kind of gradual. And I think that they just didn't expect that to be. And then she came back and she said, Quinn's dead. And I don't have the intersect anymore. So they didn't feel like, and she seemed like the old Sarah, so they didn't have a reason to suspect at first.
Yeah, and boy, did I think that, and we had talked about that. She was going to see that picture, and everything was going to come flooding back. And it was so interesting to me, and definitely now we know what Yvonne Strahovski meant when she said that the end was slightly tragic. It's so interesting that even right to the end, she never got her memories back. Like there were hints, like at the Wienerlicious and hints of her remembering that Chuck and Sarah, but no flood.
Well, see, this is what I was thinking about this because, of course, we've been discussing it endlessly on the website. But I was thinking about this in context of a conversation I was having with a fan who was having a really, really hard time with the fact that she didn't have that flood of memories come back, at least that we saw. Who knows? Maybe it just was magic. But if you look at how it was structured, the first thing she remembered was that she had carved the Sarah, Sarah plus Chuck, that she had carved that. That's the first thing she remembered. And that had been just a couple of weeks beforehand. It wasn't that long ago. And so I wonder if that then is what's triggered her other memories coming back. But it wasn't, it was from oldest to newest, not newest to oldest. So she was starting to remember things from way back in, season 1. That was starting to come back. And so it's just kind of gradually, they're moving forward. And she had already regained several memories by, in just a couple of days again. Or I guess a couple of weeks had passed by the time they were on the beach. So, I think that's what we have to ask FEDAC for sure, but it seemed like that's what they had established, was that remembering that recent memory triggered the beginning of the return of her memories, starting with the list and coming forward.
Yeah. So the implication would be that 6 months down the road or a year down the road, she might actually regain a lot of her memories.
Yeah, that long.
Yeah.
I mean, because she made tremendous progress from who we saw at the beginning of episode 12 and who we saw at the end of episode 13. To me, that was, we started with pre-Burbank Sarah and we ended with at least middle season 3 Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, telling Chuck, asking Chuck, initiating that kiss and basically reaching out to him and saying, you know what, I want to remember, let's try it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and when you think it took 5 years to transform that Sarah into new Sarah.
Exactly.
And that kind of thing, starting from scratch, doesn't happen overnight. It could be a little accelerated, but not overnight, and not in 2 weeks.
No, not in 2 weeks. No, I think, you know, from what I saw on the beach, by the time we got to that point, and I said this after I watched it, thank God I got to watch it early so that I could be prepared for everybody. But from what I saw, the memories were coming back. She was coming back, and you know, we were actually pretty close. It wasn't that far in the future that she would be back to the Sarah who remembered how much she loved Chuck and who did love Chuck. You know, not just remembered it but felt it.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a beautiful and poetic ending. I loved it. It was bold. It was unexpected, but I loved it.
Yeah. How many couples get a chance at a do-over like that, huh?
Oh,
I
wow.
know.
You know, I just thought that was sweet.
Somebody who is not happy with the ending was challenging me and said, well, how would you have felt if it had been Chuck, not Sarah, who was on that beach with just barely, you know, having remembered just a few things from the last 5 years? And you know what? I think that might have been better. I think I might have liked that even more. Mm-hmm. But anyway. But yes, the Sarah in 512 was pre-Burbank Sarah. And wow.
Yeah, wow.
Killer.
Kudos to Yvonne Strahovski and Zachary Levi in these 2 episodes, man. That was some outstanding acting. They really, the emotion, and Zach, you know, in the house, in the dream house.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I cried my eyes out. That was just so heavy. So heavy. I could not stop crying.
I know.
And I really thought at that point that, you know, something might happen. I don't know, like he would pull out that picture or something. That's when I thought that she would just, you know, all of a sudden remember, you know, a lot of things, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, to have her react the way she did was so surprising to me. And here's Chuck still crying and heartbroken, and I'm still crying and heartbroken. And all of a sudden there's that, you know,
I did my job too well.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Then it was like, gasp. Holy cow.
Yeah. Well, and you know, and the funny thing is, flip it around the other way. And if that was really what she was thinking after Chuck poured his heart out to her, if he had shown her that picture with the baby and everything, maybe it would have just spun her the other way. Like she's even when she finally believed everything, she said, I just don't have it emotionally. Like
Right.
And so if he had shown her that baby, that could have just made her run.
Good point, because she had just come to the point where she was ready to have kids in that, you know, house with the picket fence. She had just to the place emotionally where she could handle that. Before then, she'd been really scared of it. We'd seen it over and over.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, that Sarah was, she was not ready for that at all.
Mm-hmm.
But then to have her say that, and then for Quinn to come in right after that and say, oh, by the way, I was lying about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Just wham.
What a number to be done on her then too. You know, I mean, we're lucky that it didn't, you know, like drive her crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, so much being thrown at her, and then the memory of carving those words into the wall, you know, and then Quinn turns and tries to, you know, shoot her and kill her, have Chuck jump in the way. It was such a whole lot of stuff that happened in those couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I love that Chuck jumped in front of her. If she didn't believe him before, that had to have done it. That had to clinch it for her.
Yeah.
That he
and then for him to tell her to run, that they were coming after her.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, that was so good.
Yeah.
That was an amazing episode.
And some great character stuff. Like when after Chuck jumps in front of the bullet, how she still isn't 100% there. Like she's like, I believe you,
But I don't feel it.
but I don't feel
remember
it. Yeah, and then it plays so real.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh,
But yet
man,
she did
those two.
she did show concern
Mhm.
right away for Chuck. So,
So she was starting to remember. She was starting to feel it again, and maybe not remember, but to feel it again.
feel it. Yeah.
Well, I don't even know that. I think, like, I got the impression through this episode that it wasn't her connecting emotionally. It was her piecing together details as a spy.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the sense of the whole thing about the cold toes, and when
Yeah.
Chuck goes across to Ellie. And when I first viewed that, I thought, so she's going to start to connect emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that she was connecting emotionally. She was piecing together details that were making her not corroborate Quinn's story.
Yeah, making her question him and his motives.
Yeah.
Although
It's-
she did,
Mhm.
she also, she kind of veered the wrong direction there. I think she was starting to really question him, but he said she's in on it. Ellie's in on it.
Yeah.
And so she decided, okay, that must be what that is.
Mhm.
That, like, it was some conversation just for her benefit. Like, they knew that she would follow Chuck. I don't know. I understand where she was coming, why she might have thought that, but that was kind of like, really, Sarah? Let's think that through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think hands down, Nicholas Quinn is the ultimate worst villain they've ever had on that show.
I didn't hate him as much as I hated Decker, but I hated him a lot.
I hated
Yeah.
him a whole lot. And I'm sorry, he was 10 times worse than Shaw. 10 times.
Yeah.
Shot it and take 5 years of Sarah's life from her.
Yeah.
And her feelings for Chuck and everything. Although she never took off the ring, her wedding
No,
ring.
she didn't.
Well, I mean, she's a spy, and that's part of her
It's her cover, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and boy, with Quinn, it's so interesting that he could have done all of this himself, but he wanted the corkscrew of Sarah doing it to Chuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
He told Chuck outright, I'm going to take everything from you.
Yeah.
And that's what he did. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm glad he's dead.
He was the worst.
Not just mostly dead. He's all dead.
He's all dead.
Finally. It took 3 tries, but they got him.
Yeah.
I was hoping for him to get sucked out that airplane, let me tell you.
But how about that
Yeah.
opening scene with the fight in her old apartment, her old hotel room?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Throws him out the window and holds him there with the
Yeah.
around the neck. Yeah, that was hardcore Sarah right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she didn't trust him right away, and it's funny, and I actually, looking back, she was cold, Sarah, but she wasn't fully on board with Quinn even after she started playing along with him. She was still just kind of piecing everything together.
And I think, as you said, that goes back to her being a really good spy.
Yeah.
She knew something was off, but she's going to play it this way until she knows for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she did find out for sure, it was heartbreaking. And yeah.
Yeah, and interesting that even after, so Chuck takes a bullet for her. She knows that Quinn is lying. Has lied to her through this whole thing, and yet when Casey comes into her apartment, she still holds out the knife.
Well, yeah, she doesn't completely trust him either, but I love that scene.
Yeah, I
That was
did
a-
too.
That was a callback to the end of, excuse me, to the end of American Hero.
Yeah,
When she's packing and he comes to tell her, she knows Chuck.
yeah.
You
Oh, and let's talk about the callbacks.
We have a whole long list of them.
Bunch of them.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's a funny thing because I really, really, really appreciated how well they brought closure to the whole series. Like all of these callbacks to me, like every single one just felt like they were such beautiful bookends to what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
I particularly love that sequence in Goodbye where they do pilot, helicopter, tango, sizzling shrimp all in a row.
Yeah.
I just love that. As I was watching it, I was keeping kind of a stream of consciousness diary as I was watching it the first time, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I see what's happening here. Oh man, that was so cool.
Yeah, and how they do a Wienerlicious in Berlin. And,
well, yeah, that was the sizzling shrimp, that whole fight. I mean, even some of the choreography was exactly the same as that fight in the Wienerlicious and sizzling shrimp.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Yeah.
And then Chuck shooting down the airplane or the helicopter.
Oh, that in our finale party, that brought the biggest laughs of the whole double thing.
And then it was Morgan who did the face palm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Literally, we rewound that several times.
Yes. We did too. We had to watch that a couple more times because I had my 3 nieces with me, my 3 oldest, and then the littlest one too, but nieces with us, and watching, and they're like, that's right before the commercial, and they're like, oh my gosh, we gotta watch it again.
Yeah,
it's hilarious. Casey's reaction to it. Shut down my helicopter with my own gun.
And actually, I got a call from one of the people who came to the finale party, who I guess rewatched this morning again, and was like, I can't believe how many things I missed because there was so much cheering and laughing and all that kind of thing that we missed so many lines. Even though we would go back and replay things, there were so many details in like little jokes and jests and things that I know I can't. I've already watched it twice now and I can't wait to go back.
Yeah, same here. It really gets better and better the more you watch it. It really does, because you see, it genuinely is a love letter to the fans.
Yes.
I had someone here with me watching it, and at the end of it, I said, well, I'm trying to manage the chat room and everybody freaking out over the ending, and I look over and she's just in tears, and I said, well, what did you think? And she said, it took her a minute, and she says, I just feel like this whole thing was such a love letter to the fans. And she doesn't read any of that stuff. She had never heard that phrase. I hadn't said it. Mm-hmm. She just came up with that, and I was like, wow, that's so cool that you totally got that.
Yeah. So it worked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It worked. I totally felt it. I was watching it here. Of course, I watched it earlier in the week, and I'm glad I did, because I actually ended up having a couple more people here than I originally thought. And the 2 of the people that were here hadn't watched Chuck. It was just...
Yeah, same at our party.
So, and now they want to go back and watch all 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but my daughter was with me, and so it was fun to see her reaction to some of the stuff, and of course she was in the crowd that, Sarah better get all her memories back. They better not leave us like that. So I just kind of looked at her and smiled. But there was a lot going on because the other 2 had not seen it. They really didn't get it. They didn't get, because I still got emotional during some of those key parts, and they weren't really getting it. And I finally said, look, you guys haven't been invested in it for 5 years. And so you don't have the connection right now. So I get it. But there was a lot of commotion, and I missed a whole lot. And then, trying to keep up with Twitter and, peeking in on the chat room, it was difficult. So I definitely need to just go and watch it, like, really by myself. Just me.
Yeah. That's how I watched it the first time, all by myself, middle of the night. I couldn't sleep, and I got the notification that it was available on the press site, and I thought, you know what? There's no way I'm going to sleep now. Yeah. I may as well just watch it. So I did, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to do that and kind of say goodbye on my own. And actually, it was with VDAC, actually, sort of, because I sent him my diary, my running commentary after the first one, and he came online and he waited until I finished watching the second one. He waited until I sent him that one too, and then he emailed me right back. And that was just a really nice way for me to get through, to kind of just push on through to the end of that 5 stages of grief, and really process and everything.
Yeah, my son watched it with me the first time, and it was still hard. I started tearing up at one point, and he's watching me instead of watching the show, and he's, Mom, why is your face getting red? Well, there's a distraction right there.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think that everybody that's been a fan of this for so long deserves to sit and watch it alone, just completely alone. No internet, no Twitter, no email, nothing distracting you. Just sit, watch it, absorb it, and then come and tell us how you feel about it.
Yes.
Because I think that that's really, you need to have your own personal goodbye.
Mhm.
And you can't, there's definitely something to be said for watching it with everybody else, with a bunch of other fans, whether in person or online, and having that communal experience, because that's been such a part of the Chuck experience and the Chuck phenomenon, is that feeling of community. But I think also just especially for those of us that have been so invested, you need to sit down and watch it alone with nothing else going on. Just grab your box of Kleenex and your snacks and sit there and just experience it.
Yeah.
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 So I loved Casey through this. When Beckman came in and said, I need the general.
Colonel.
We're going to,
the Colonel.
oh, I'm sorry. No, she's, yeah, right.
No, she's
That's right.
the general.
Yeah,
He's
I
the
need the
colonel.
Colonel. Yeah.
Right. So, and he gives out with the grunt and then denies the call from Alex. You know, you knew that he was going to be serious about this. He's going after this guy. And it was kind of cool to see that old soldier back again, you know.
And Morgan bringing him down.
That was awesome. That was a wonderful, wonderful scene. I'm so glad that it was Morgan that did that. That, you know, even sitting in a chair, he stood toe to toe with John Casey. And
Lieutenant Paris.
Yeah.
What's that?
Lieutenant Paris, too.
Mm-hmm.
That was Robbie McNeil's cameo, was in the helicopter.
Yeah. I had to rewind and point that out to everybody because people didn't see it.
Yeah. And he also, of course, directed the final episode, and he directed the first episode, too, didn't he? I think that was McGee that directed the first one.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But he's directed, I think he's directed every finale. All 6 of them.
Yeah. And and how much fun was it when Mama B showed up?
Oh, and that was such a callback to the first time she and Sarah met. He's like, well, there's my mother. And she's he's like, so what? Well, she's behind you with a gun.
and what do we say about baby Clara and firearms?
The
hands over her eyes. Oh my goodness, we fell over laughing.
That was so funny. And then Mama B turning around, I'm so sorry.
Mommy, we love you.
and the funny thing is, you get the idea that this has happened before.
Yes.
That her with the guns and the baby.
Yeah, because Ellie comes in and she's like, why are their guns out? And you know what? I also really loved, and I think it took me a couple of watches to realize it, is I just loved the fact that they just came walking into Castle. You know, this is such a family thing now. The fact that it's a spy business. It's just, here we are. Oh, and here's the baby.
Yeah.
I really got a kick out of that, and it just felt, it kind of felt full circle.
Oh, and what about how Big Mike is told everything and doesn't believe it?
Well, if Jeffster told you that, would you believe it? Especially where they were the heroes and,
Yeah.
But I got such a kick out of the fact that they sold the Buy More to Subway. That was a really cool shout out.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Was fun.
And they said in was it Bullet Train? That they said that they wanted, or no. What came before Bullet Train? Bo Derek. Mm-hmm. They said at the beginning, that they wanted to get rid of the stupid cousin, basically. They were going to get rid of the Buy More. And so they did, apparently. They sold it to Subway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they can go on with the cyber terrorism thing.
Yeah. Now, we have to talk about the big climax, the whole sequence at the orchestra. Our night was just cheering through this whole thing.
I don't know why. That made me cry harder than anything else. Both times. As soon as the Jeffster walked out on stage, I lost it. Here I go again. I don't know what it is about that scene, but I think knowing what it's meant to Vic and Scott to be Jeffster and to do those performances, And then also just, well, it was a great song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that too. And it's always emotional when Jeffster gets to sing. You always know that there's some big emotional thing happening. So I think maybe we've been conditioned. You know what? That's what I'm going to go with. I've been conditioned to expect something emotional when they sing.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, I mean, having that orchestra there, it was just a big scene. And I know, and now it's a little more common. I remember when I first heard the Tea Party did this thing with an orchestra together, and it was incredibly moving.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about having an actual orchestra behind this rock music that elevates it.
It makes it
turns it
big.
into, it makes it an anthem, which is my favorite.
Yeah.
I love anthemic songs.
Yeah.
I just love them. And yeah, you're right. It did. It made it an anthem. And then to have all these wonderful callbacks happening. I mean, obviously that was Fat Lady with the concert hall and the bomb that responded to the music. And then, Chuck and Sarah up on the roof, confronting Quinn, and Sarah shoots him like she did Lieutenant Mauser in Santa Claus. And Chuck decides he has to make this huge decision.
Oh,
and he uploads the Intersect, which is always, emotional. It's always a big moment, but for it to be at the expense of Sarah regaining her memories, and she is on board with that, that was huge.
Well, here is again, Chuck showing one of the things that made Sarah fall in love with him anyway. Mm-hmm. Besides, not wanting to shoot anybody. He's just, but that scene right there where Chuck, it's these sacrifices that he'll make and the reasons behind them. These are some of the things that made Sarah fall in love with him. Mm-hmm. So, I kind of want to believe that at that point, her feelings started to, I don't know, maybe a little twinge. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, because she's the same Sarah. She's the same Sarah that fell in love with him in the first place. So why wouldn't those things still make her fall in love with him? Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, and back to the pilot, the very, very thing initially that made her protect him against Casey was when she saw that in him.
So all these things, Chuck and Sarah are still Chuck and Sarah.
Exactly.
And it's inevitable that they end up together. It's inevitable. It's written. So let it be written. So let it be done.
Yeah, they're soulmates. I mean, they've said that from the very beginning that these two are soulmates.
Yeah.
And that's, we've seen it over and over and over, which I think is one reason that it's never been a question for me that they would be together. Mm-hmm. They of course they will. Yeah. They're soulmates.
Yeah. And this, I just love that it ended with it as much as, Chuck wanted to destroy the Intersect. And remember that emotional scene where it's like, this has taken everything away. It has hurt so many people. And I love the fact that, true to his character, he'll do this thing. He'll take on this thing that has hurt so much to save somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, to save... Yeah, the what is it? The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's been him from the beginning. Or the one.
Yeah, and
that's been
and this completes. And I know Matt G and a couple other people were talking about the hero journey for Chuck, and this completes his hero journey because now it's not something that's thrust on him; it's something that he chooses.
Again, he's chosen it again. He did back at the end of season 2, but now he's chosen it knowing exactly what it means, and not just knowing what it means to him, physically and emotionally to have the Intersect, but knowing what it means to not be able to give Sarah her memories back via the Intersect.
Yeah.
That was powerful. That was a powerful moment.
Oh, yeah.
And then for them to be able to go down and have her remember Irene Damova.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fresh tears, because to me she's coming back. She is. She may not have known exactly what that meant, and she's trying to be cautious and not get our hopes up and not get his hopes up, but it's coming back to her.
Yeah,
she's remembering, and yeah, that was a wonderful moment.
Which is why I love the way it ended. Again, would I have liked for Sarah to have all her memories back? Yes, I would have. It would have been nice. But the fact that it didn't happen makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
And the way it ended, you know, just with the two of them on the beach, you know, with that magical kiss.
Mhm.
I just think that was just so beautiful. And like, again, it just totally made sense.
Yeah, it on
Completely makes
so
sense.
many levels. And you know what? If let's just jump aside for a second and consider, what if they had just made a pat ending where all her memories flood back and she's A-okay. You know, I actually prefer this because it keeps me thinking about the story.
Yes, exactly. And that's what I loved about
Yeah.
it so much. You know, they gave that to us, you know, don't ever, you know, it's kind of a way of saying, you know, you'll never forget Chuck and Sarah.
Yeah.
You won't forget them. You'll always be thinking what happened after that kiss.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that, Liz. I like that.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, a pat ending, you know, and tidy little ending with a flash forward showing how everybody's doing and they're faring so well. And, you know, and it's all happily ever after with some danger for Casey. Let's not. That is his happily
Well, that
ever
is his
after.
happily ever after. Yeah.
I mean, that would have been nice. It would have been a nice, tidy ending for the show. And I know that they would have done it well because they do those kinds of things well, those heartwarming scenes. They do them really well. But I'm with you guys. I really feel like this stayed true to the show
Mhm.
to end it this way for these two. That to me, it was a very hopeful ending for them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really an ending. It was a beginning.
Yeah.
From
Right.
my perspective, which to me was, instead of feeling like, oh, and now it's over, I feel like, oh, I wonder what they're doing next. You know,
Yeah.
it's just it's subtle, but it's a different and a more, it's a forward looking ending versus a backward looking ending.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, nothing's set in stone.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, you know, we can go on and imagine. I'm sure the fanfic authors are just thrilled to bits that they had this to work with.
Oh yeah.
You know, and should there be a movie, then there's plenty of material for them to explore. They've left it in a way that they can have, you know, we can either have a movie where Sarah's dealing with her memories coming back, or maybe they're not all the way back and they're out doing these missions and they kind of start coming back, or they're all the way back now and they're off doing something. I mean, there's so much potential for just those two characters, let alone the way that they left it with everybody else.
Mhm.
So
Right. I was just going to say, Casey going after Gertrude, which we knew was going to happen. I called it.
oh, sweet was that hug with Alex.
Oh,
Oh, my
yeah.
God.
Yeah, that was
cried on that.
so precious. The look on her face too, you know.
Well, and just knowing how Adam and McKenna have connected too
Yeah.
made that real special.
Yeah. So we have Casey going off with Gertrude. We have Morgan and Alex moving in together, which could be a funny sitcom if you think about it. And then you have the Awesomes coming to Chicago. Woohoo!
Yeah.
I know. Which, of course, Ryan McPartlin is from Chicago,
Yeah.
Right.
from the area. So I thought that was really neat.
Mhm.
Going back to the Midwest. And Sarah Lancaster is from Kansas City. You know,
Right.
near my grounds. So I kind of love that they went to the Midwest. I
Yeah.
thought that was
Yeah.
That was cool. So many things that they could do, you know, so many, I mean, even spin-off shows,
Yeah.
you know.
Well,
Well, Jeffster is going to be huge in Germany. I mean, they love Hasselhoff, so you know they're going to love Jeffster, right?
Yeah. That is funny. And
Yeah.
also what, you know, and I think one of the things that this show does beautifully, when Chuck proposes to Sarah, in the background as that floor cleaner is in the foreground, and you just see that little tiny glimpse, and then it makes you imagine everything.
Yeah.
I loved the fact, and they could have had 2 or 3 minutes at the end of playing back scenes from the series, but they had just a few choice ones, and you saw a little bit of a reaction in her face, and then a little bit more, and then you saw her genuinely laughing, and these little snippets to just suggest that she was reconnecting,
Mhm.
and then just let us think, let us dream, let us, you know.
And then at the end, she was in tears.
Yeah.
She was crying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
She was, don't tell me that's season 1 Sarah. That's not season 1 Sarah.
yeah,
No, she's well on her way back.
Yeah.
And Chuck's the one doing it, which is also so precious.
yeah,
But, you know, this relationship between the two of them is so strong that even though she doesn't remember, and she doesn't feel. She, at that point, she was not feeling, and she was confused about how she was supposed to move ahead, having lost all of these memories. Chuck's the one that is going to be the one that can bring him back for her. You know?
And if he got that far, that
Always
fast, there's no question.
Exactly.
Mhm.
There's no question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, can we talk about when she was watching the mission logs?
Oh, yeah.
The Sarah Walker Chronicles.
Oh my
Oh,
yes!
yeah.
Oh my god! Oh, Yvonne, that just brought me to my knees. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
insane. Watching those videos, and finally getting the romance from the falling in love from her perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a gift. That was just priceless. I'm
Yes.
so glad they did that, and that they let us see Yvonne watching it, or see Sarah watching it, and kind of realizing that she was in love with him, that she did fall in love with him, and it wasn't a recent thing. It happened on day 546.
Yeah, that was so
Yeah.
neat. That was so neat to see, after that kiss, because and I love that little line where he acknowledged the fact, and we tried to deny it afterwards, or what did we
Yes.
say? But yet we really see after that kiss, it meant a lot to her.
It did. Oh, her video log from that day was really something. And then the one where she's like, it's really calm right now, nothing's happening, and I'm in love with him. I don't know what to do. I'm in love with him.
Oh, beautiful.
That's
Beautiful.
Between, that's right before first kill. It's between. Oh gosh, somebody worked out the dates. It's between. Shoot. It was during the Shaw time,
Mhm.
so I feel a little vindicated. She was. It was before first kill. It was before she packed her bags at an American Hero. She knew who she was going with. She knew who she was in love with at that point.
Yeah.
And now we know it's canon. It's set in stone.
Yeah.
She was in love with him before first kill.
Boy.
And then, obviously she thought he killed someone, and that kind of threw her a little bit, but she had already admitted to herself that she was in love with him.
Yeah. And boy, is it going to be so much fun to go back through the series and piece all this together.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes. I'm so anxious to do it. Sadly, I only have season 1, so I have to start collecting the other seasons on DVD.
Uh-huh.
But I'm so anxious to dive into it all over again. And just without, no offense to anybody, but without, live chat, without Twitter,
Yeah. Without the distractions.
Yeah.
without the distractions, just being able to enjoy it, as the little show that could and did.
Yeah.
And,
And will.
Yeah.
and will, and just relive it all over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's-
sad to see it go, but loved how it went.
Yes. It's a jewel. It's magic in a bottle. I don't know that, I've been a fan of a lot of shows over the years, but nothing like this.
Mm.
Nothing like this. This has been special.
Yeah.
And I really loved I really do feel like this was a love letter to the fans, especially that last hour. I mean, I know that there are people that are not happy with what they feel is ambiguity in the way that it ended, but ambiguity, there we go, with how it ended. But I think it was a beautiful, just a perfect ending that I didn't know I wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I totally agree. And the more I think about it, the more I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm
And I'm going to love going back and seeing how all of it ties together. We had a lot of information about the intersect.
mhm.
Mary said, oh, by the way, that key was split between 3 people. So that's why there was Fulcrum had one
Mhm.
part. The Ring had one part. And then Volkov had one part, which he gave to Beckham without her knowing it. How cool was that?
Yeah.
She'd been wearing it the whole time.
Yeah.
That was really neat. I liked that they brought her in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the fact that the intersect was actually a learning tool.
Mm.
It was never meant to be a weapon.
Which makes it all of a sudden so much more consistent that Stephen Bartowski would have been working on it, knowing how he felt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And why it wasn't working for other people that were trying to use it as a weapon.
Yes.
When
Yes.
they were trying to get the Gretas, trying to put it in the Gretas, and it was malfunctioning because the motives weren't correct. I don't know if there was that kind of, that kind of technology and built into it to know what the motives were. But Chuck always had pure motives.
Yeah.
He always, oh my gosh, he always was using it as a learning tool.
Yeah.
It was always meant to be a learning tool. Whoa!
Right.
My mind just blew.
Yeah. Well, and you know, that flash when he was a kid, we still don't know exactly what happened there. But let's just say that was a pure flash, because at that point the key wouldn't have been split up because it was still in development. So when he got that pure flash, I'm wondering if that prepared his brain to be able to take the intersect later.
Yeah, I think that was. I think that's a major reason why his brain was able to handle it.
Yeah.
Later on, even though it did need the governor at some points, until Ellie was able to go in and fix whatever that malfunction was. But now he has the pristine intersect.
Yes.
And I don't know if that means that Ellie needs to fix that one issue again or not, but he has the pristine intersect, and I think that's really was a nice way to send it off, really.
Yeah.
I think.
Right. All the fans that wanted Chuck to have the intersect back were satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, there's some disgruntlement that he got it back, and then it didn't even help him defuse the bomb. That it was Sarah who remembered, but that's okay. He has it now.
Yeah.
And he's the only one that should have it. We've seen it over and over and over again. He is the only one that should have it. And I think, knowing that it's a teaching tool, wow, that just makes so much sense.
Well, even in the pilot, the intersect got him into that room, but it was not the intersect that allowed them to defuse that bomb. It was the Ira
It was all Chuck.
Yeah, it was all Chuck.
Yeah.
And so here it was totally natural, because he was looking to the intersect now to try to figure this out. And it took Sarah reminding him, no, it's not the intersect that's going to do this.
Yeah, it's you, Chuck. It's always been you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Boy, more and more layers.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it really was a powerful, powerful conclusion.
Yeah. Very, very much so.
And I like that we left it with Beckman basically saying, if you guys want to come work with me again, you know where to find me.
You know where to find me.
Yeah, so they have that. But, I think they'll probably stick with the anti-cyber terrorism thing. And and I love the fact that nobody died. I know, man. People were so worried about that. And I just could not fathom how they would do that. They couldn't. That's not the show.
Yeah, who would they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not the show I've been watching for the last 5 years.
No.
Yeah.
Nor is a miscarriage.
Yeah.
Which pretty vicious hate mail about that one.
Well, and also I love the fact, and I know there were a lot of people that wanted Sarah to be pregnant at the end of it. But when you think about it, that alone starts to limit their options of where they could go with a possible movie or extension of some kind. Where if they leave it like this, they could always get her pregnant after that. But leaving it like this, if you look at every single one of the story angles, everything is wide open for where they could take the story.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And as we said earlier, what if this Sarah found out she was pregnant? What if the Sarah that we left on the beach with Chuck found out she was pregnant? That would be a huge freak out. Plus, they couldn't have sent her through all of those fight scenes if she'd been pregnant. That's I mean, again, that's not this show. They wouldn't do that.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And, that was all Sarah.
Yeah.
She did not have the intersect. I had to email Fedak and ask, because it sure looked like she had the intersect some of those moves, but no, that was all Sarah.
And speaking about that, wasn't it fun when she did the exact same things that Bryce did in the intersect facility?
I love that. It was even the same bomb.
Yeah, but that's totally consistent too, because he was her partner, and so she would know all this stuff, and possibly even this gets a little funny because he was rogue at that time, we think, and we still don't know exactly. Maybe thinking about this pre-Burbank Sarah, maybe she did know a little more than she let on about this plan or whatever. Who knows? Anyway, stuff to what was that? Conjecture.
Yeah. speculate.
Speculate, yeah. Interesting speculation. How much really did she know? Did she know more than we think about Bryce's plans?
I don't know. I don't know that there's support for that, but I think a case could be made.
Yeah. But at any rate, it was fun to have her do the same sliding under the table and kicking the window up and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then instead of escaping through the ceiling like Bryce did, they
Hid
Chuck and
in the
Morgan
floor.
and Casey were in the floor.
Yeah.
That was cool. There was a lot of mirroring of that. You know, a lot of things that it was a callback, but it was done in sort of an opposite, like Morgan landing the helicopter instead of Chuck.
Yeah.
You know, and yeah. Just,
Oh, you mean Casey?
Just it's, yeah, sorry. Chuck being the one to bring it down.
Yes. Yeah.
But like he did in Helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
But Casey being the one in the helicopter.
Yeah.
Whereas in Helicopter, it was Casey on the roof and Chuck bringing the helicopter down.
Yeah.
You know, so it was all these callbacks, but done in a just kind of a new sort of twisted way. But so cool. Oh,
Yeah.
so many callbacks.
So thank you, Chris Fedak.
Yeah.
Excellent
Just
job.
brilliantly written. Brilliantly
Yeah.
written.
Well written, and episode 12 was LaFranc and Judkins.
Mm-hmm. Weren't they
Fantastic.
both? I thought they were both.
Fedak wrote the finale,
Yeah.
That's right.
and yeah, LaFranc and Judkins wrote the 12. So
Yeah.
Robbie has directed all of the all 6 possible finales of the series. So I really feel like he was the best person to have done this one. You know, I feel really good about that they put it in his hands to finish the series. It seemed like they couldn't have chosen anyone better. And then they chose for 512, I think it was Jay, I'm going to butcher his last name, Chenandeskar?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not sure. I can't remember.
Yeah, he was, he directed several episodes in seasons 1 and 2, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he was back for this episode, and I thought that was for the penultimate episode of the series. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Oh, and I do. This is a total tangent, total side note. But of course, there were a lot of blog entries this week about the end of Chuck. Some really great ones, and I urge everybody to go back and look. But I do want to mention that I did a personal Goodbye Chuck blog at chuckpodcast.com, and I invite everybody to check it out. And in particular, I wanted to say a huge thank you to. There were so many incredibly kind comments about the blog on Twitter, and in particular, some of the people inside the show were just. I'm just stunned by how appreciative they were and the words that they use. So thank you so much, and do check that out at chuckpodcast.com. It's called Goodbye Chuck, the Little Engine That Could.
And we have the official Chuck support group thread over on chucktv.net.
Yeah.
And kind of help you guys get through this, and it seems to be working.
Yeah.
And in there, and you know, all week I've been getting emails. I don't know if Liz has too, but we've been, you know, you guys have been sending in the emails and leaving comments on the forum and on the site, you know, with your thanks and just kind of some memories of being part of the chucktv.net community and the podcast too. And that's been really lovely. And we really, really appreciate that. You may have made us cry a few times.
Yeah, last night you guys were all sending out your tweets on thanking us and Gray and the podcast and the website, and I actually tweeted, "You guys are making me cry as much as the show is."
Yeah.
And it was true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So big thank you.
And a lot of you have asked us. Yeah, and a lot of you have said, you know, that you're going to miss the site and the podcast almost as much as you're going to miss the show, and that
says a lot.
Yeah.
It makes it worth the hours and the stress, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess this is a good point to segue further.
I think so.
Yeah. Speaking of, so we're going to have our last sponsor message, and then of course we have no spoilers. Wish we did, but we will be concluding with a couple of things. One is where to find us, looking toward the future, and also we will show a few photos and videos from the finale parties, so you don't want to miss those.
That's right.
Red Giant's Magic Bullet Suite can give you Hollywood-style looks and special effects as simply as with a single click. For a short time only, get Magic Bullet Mojo for only $49. Starting your own podcast? You need an audio interface to get sound in. Go to presonus.com for a wide range of affordable yet high-quality options. And if you're a photographer, you can get a lot more out of your camera with high dynamic range photography, made possible by Photomatix software.
And we're back. And so what we're going to do right now, and probably in the midst of us talking, is I'm going to roll some of the pictures and videos that were taken at the finale parties. And I hope by the time I've finished editing this that there are more, but we do have some. And as well, we're going to talk a little bit about where you can find us. It's January 27th, and we're here at Subway in Toronto, and we're actually dominating the Subway. Everybody here is going to watch the Chuck finale, and here we go over at this table. The kids table, and Gildish on Twitter, and Judy Pelham and her husband, the winner of the Whiskey Rocks competition, my son Taryn. From the very first podcast opening, Michelle. And more from the first podcast opening, there's Louise.
Are you taping this? Because that just ruined the song.
And Greg from the original podcast opening.
Love this one. Love this one.
And one Subway in fourth play, madly working away. And now we're on our way from Subway.
Go! Go, Sarah!
Nobody ever gives Tim Jones enough praise. I love that guy, especially his daughter.
Uh-huh.
Okay, well, groove it out, guys. Where's your grooves? Wait for it.
Well, you can find us all over the place.
Yeah.
Chuck was our first fan site, but not our last.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Together. So I think our biggest one right now is true-blood.net, and we do a weekly podcast over there. So if you're going to miss our smiling faces, you can see us over there. Again, true-blood.net, and that's of course for the HBO show True Blood, which hits its 5th season this summer.
Yep.
Yes, and then we have our nicegirlstv.com, where Mel and I head up a great group of ladies that get together, and we actually focus on strong female characters in television today, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. So don't miss us over there, where we talk about a whole lot of shows, many of which you guys are watching already.
Mm-hmm.
And you may recognize some of the names over there from the Chuck fandom. Freya, the wonderful fan fiction writer, is writing for us over there now. She just started recently. Jan, Happy Days, she's been covering Bones and Psych and Fringe for us. Who else from? Aliveria?
Yeah.
I think is her Twitter. I think that's how you pronounce it. Sorry, Karen, but at least I didn't forget you. I kept forgetting to include her in my emails. To the nice girl, but anyway. But she's writing for us as well. And Kay, who does the recaps on ChuckTV.net, she's covering a couple of shows for us at NiceGirlsTV.com too. So when we find the good ones, we find a way to keep them around. So you'll find several familiar faces over there.
Yeah.
As well as maybe some recommendations for some other shows that you might like. Mm-hmm. But we also recently launched OnceUponAFansite.com, and that's for the show Once Upon a Time on ABC, which Liz and I just fell in love with. We saw the pilot over the summer and just have been thrilled with it. We were debating whether or not to open a fan site for that one, because we were so invested in, the final season of Chuck, and we didn't really know if we had the time or the energy. But here, as we got to the end, we decided, you know what? We think that could be a new obsession. So nothing will ever be the same as Chuck, but I think that'll be, it's a good one. It's a really good
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And then if you were thinking about building a fan site of your own, why, Liz, tell them all about it.
We have buildabetterfansite.com, which we just launched just recently. And we're actually going to be celebrating a grand opening of sorts pretty soon, probably within the next week or so. We were really, really waiting for the Chuck the finale to finish out and play out, and just really wanted to focus on that this week. So but we're going to teach you everything we know, everything that we've learned over the years about building a fan site, and all the ins and outs, and some of the pitfalls that we can maybe warn you against, some of the tools that you can use. And we hope that it's going to be a help to you if you want to start your own fan site.
Very cool.
Yeah, we're really excited about that. It's actually been in the works for 2 years now.
Yeah.
Wow.
We've just had, Chuck and True Blood have taken a lot of our time. But we finally got to the point where we felt like we were ready to start sharing some of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, you can find us at chucktv.net. The site is not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's sticking around.
And there will be a lot to talk about. I mean, where the cast are headed to different projects, and lots and lots of stuff.
Yeah, all kinds of wrap-ups. We have some fun things planned. We have our traditional survey that should be up now that you can go take, the fan survey, the big, and this, of course, is a really big one since it's all 5 years. I mean, we're dealing with season 5, but also all 5 years. And then we have some of those tournaments, that we did, the villains and the songs of Sing-Off.
Mm-hmm.
That we now need to do the season 5. Since that's over, we need to do the season 5 section of that and then have the ultimate showdown of both of those. And we have a really cool Chuck by the Numbers infographic that we've been working with someone to produce that I think you guys are going to get a real kick out of, and have a lot of fun. Just kind of a really fun way to remember all 5 seasons. So some of the just ways that this show has been unique.
Yeah.
It's
gorgeous.
Pineapple.
Yeah. Very, 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 very neat stuff. And of course, on Twitter, definitely, if you're not on Twitter by this point, get on Twitter.
Yes.
Because that's a great way to connect.
And we'll still be running the chucktv.net Twitter handle. And of course, you can always find Liz at Pearls of Wisdom. So.
Yep. Very, very cool.
And Gray, where will they find you?
Oh, there's, again, lots of places you can find me. One, actually, really, really cool thing that I forgot to mention is that, again, CNN gave some great Chuck coverage. And part of it was they interviewed yours truly for a tiny little mention in their Geek Out blogs. But it's there, and go to the Geek Out blogs at CNN, and you can I'll put links in the podcast post about that. So very, very cool. And they're still open to iReports. If you, as a Chuck fan, want to send in your iReports to CNN, they would love to have them. Your sort of post-finale thoughts. And so definitely go to CNN to find out about how you can do that. But in terms of finding me personally, there's lots of places. You can, of course, go to tvwriterpodcast.com. There are interviews with writers and show creators of all types. I've had some really, really cool ones on. If you like Veronica Mars, I had Rob Thomas, the creator of Veronica Mars, on. The showrunner for V and Human Target, of course, ex-Chucksters, Matt Miller and Scott Rosenbaum. The show creator and runner of Warehouse 13, Jack Kinney. Lots and lots of amazing interviews on that site, and plenty more coming as well. There's a Twitter database on that site of almost 1,000 TV writers on Twitter. So if you're ever wondering how to find the Twitter handles of writers of the other shows that you're watching, that's a great resource to be able to find them. So go to tvwriterpodcast.com for that as well. And I'm really, really excited. Again, something that I've been waiting for Chuck to end to start is a new podcast that I'll be starting around April or so called Script Podcast. And what that is interviews with feature film writers. And an interesting thing with feature film writers is I think it's a much sort of broader audience where people don't necessarily get as much into TV writing in general, like, your housewife in Alabama is not necessarily interested in the TV writers. But I think a lot of people have a fascination with feature films and how they're written. And so that will be at scriptpodcast.com. There's just a placeholder there right now, but watch for that. And of course, you can watch my Twitter for when that's going to come. And also, I've registered gray-jones.com, and you can watch that again somewhere around April, May. I'm going to be launching a personal site where you can have kind of a hub to all of my projects, because there's just a lot going on. You can always go to my YouTube channel, which is Graham A. Jones, and I post a lot of videos there that might be of interest to you. You can always find me on Twitter, and I'd be very, very happy to link with you through Facebook and or LinkedIn. Look for Graham A. Jones on both of those, or you can just send an email, and I'd be happy to link up with you. But please always put a message with your friend request, so that I know where you found me, because of course there are spammers on these places, and so. If you are, just send a message, and I'd be happy to connect with you. Beyond that, mail@chuckpodcast.com. We'll send an email to all three of us. So if you ever want a for sure way to connect with us, that's a great way to do it. And that will be up in perpetuity, or at least as long as the podcast site is up.
Yep. And of course, you can always email mel@chucktv.net and liz@chucktv.net if you want one of us.
Yep.
And they're coming in thick and fast right now. We're getting to you. We're getting to you. I promise. We'll answer you.
Yeah. Oh, and actually, something I guess has been kind of maybe should have been obvious, but if you ever want to send an email to like one of the writers, like Rafe or Lauren or somebody like that, we'd be happy to aggregate those and send them along. Say, for instance. There's been a couple of times where, like, for Amanda Kate Schumann, one of the new writers for Chuck, where we gathered a bunch of messages together and sent them along. So we're totally open to that kind of thing. Though, of course, if you want to send direct to Warner Brothers, you can do that too.
But we should note that is just like for the writers and stuff. We're not a fan mail base for the actors. That needs to go through their proper channels, which is usually their publicist or manager. So
and we don't tend to have direct connections to everybody. We also will go through those channels, so it's not necessarily an advantage to go through us.
Yeah.
Cool. So I think that's it for this marathon look at the. Goodbye, Chuck.
Yeah.
And watch for us toward the end of February. We will have more coming.
Yep. And we'll give you the opportunity to submit your questions for Chris as well, but hold off on it. Okay? Wait until we put out the call.
Simmer for a couple of weeks, and there will be other post-finale interviews with them on other sites. So go through those first, and then we'll take questions sort of around the third week of February.
Right.
Cool. Okay. Well, thanks for a wonderful 5 seasons supporting the podcast, and we will see you again soon.
Bye, Chucksters.
Bye-bye.